All right, everybody. Hey, I know you guys have been waiting for this episode. Today, we're going to talk about business. And, Jason here and myself both have businesses. We both have done multiple things over the years. I'm pretty sure, well, at least for me, I've fucked up many businesses or just ideas and haven't really always done the best thing. And, hey, we're here to be honest about our fuck ups. So, everybody will preach online on Instagram about how great they are and how they do everything right. But today we're going to talk about all the stuff we don't do right and all the things we've learned. And hopefully we can share that with you guys. And if you're sitting around here listening to our podcast and you want to start your own business, we kind of give you that inspiration to go out there and do it. And I've said in multiple different podcasts, hey, you know what? Knowledge is power, but execution is the true power. So go out there and actually build something.
Yeah, we don't know it all, but here's what we know.
All right, guys. So like I said, we're going to get into business, and Jason's a businessman. And Jason, if you guys have watched our previous episodes, Jason runs multiple businesses. But today's not about Jason's success and what he's done well. No one gives a fuck what he's doing well. What we want to know is what is the shit that you fucked up? Or how did you get to where you're at? That's really what I want to know. So, Jason, what I'm going to ask you today, right? I want you to tell me, and hell, I don't know all of these answers. So, hey, to me, today is my discovery of what you've done well. I know you've tried different ventures. I know you've done different things. And business necessarily isn't, or business lessons, should I say, don't always necessarily come from actually building a business. It could come from working a job or seeing someone else run their business. So, what I want to ask you today, and I want you to kind of to go backwards and then bring us to the current time. What have you learned? What have you messed up that has got you to the place where you're at now?
Yeah, that's a really tough question just on the spot. So as I kind of talk about business past and looking all the way back, you maybe ask me some questions along the way to help me pull some nuggets out of the journey. But really, overarching, let me say the biggest mistake that I made, I think, and again, it's no regrets, but looking back, I wish I would have gone into business for myself way sooner, but it necessarily wouldn't have worked out to my advantage. So I have to say that. The other thing that I have to say that I think was a mistake or something that I messed up early on when I was in business for myself is not charging what I was worth. And so because of that, I probably could have gone into business sooner than later. I just didn't see the revenue early on in some of my ideas. And that was totally my fault because I didn't charge what I was worth. And so I think we can dive into that a little bit more later and maybe helping people see the value that they carry, the products that they create, the ideas that they have, the solutions that they bring to people. Those are all things that are worth money to the right people because, I've told my wife in the past, we need elementary teachers for a reason. There's kids who are in kindergarten through fifth grade, and then there's professors. And so just because you don't view yourself as a professor that can teach knowledge at such a higher level, if you have an elementary understanding of any range of topics, you probably know more than a lot of people know where they're at when they're just starting off. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I think you're right. Yes, everybody's at different levels. And I will say this, right? This is probably a little bit off topic, but don't be ashamed of where you're at.
Sure.
There's times and, sometimes we stop and focus on what people are doing, but you don't know the background. And I think we've established this in our first couple of episodes. What you see on the outside isn't always what you see on the inside. And so, I think don't worry about where you're at. It's never too late, in my opinion. I've done things way beyond where most people typically do it. And if I had given up because, hey, you know what, I missed the target, there is no target, right? And so you make a great point. But let me ask you this, right? So I'll kind of slim down my question because yes, that was a very, I've been thinking about it for a minute. So, I really wanted to bring it deep, but clearly a little too much there. But let's scale it back just a tad bit, right? Why don't you tell the audience, anyone listening, what was your first business venture? What was the first thing you think you would call yourself an entrepreneur? Let's start there. And
Well,
you can ask me the same after that. Maybe we can share notes here.
well, we might actually have the same answer because I was thinking
Okay.
about this, but I want to tell you a story real quick. So,
Okay,
my
go
mom,
ahead. Go ahead.
my mom loves telling this story, and she just told it like last night. My mom's in town right now for a month,
Okay.
hanging out with us, and so she likes to bring up shit from the past. Obviously, it's like her little boy. She wants to talk about all the cute and dumb things that I did, and so she was telling a story about how, I guess when I was like 4 or 5 years old, a little boy from across the street who was like the neighbor's grandkid or something would come over and we would play or whatever. And we had a wagon and we took the wagon around the neighborhood in Pine Valley where there's pine trees all over the place. And we were picking up pine cones and then trying to sell them door to door. And my mom was joking. She's like, I live in Pine Valley and I have the biggest pine tree on the block, but these kids are like hauling pine cones around the street, trying to sell them door to door. And I think her and one of the neighbors got together and were like, well, we've got to give them something for their efforts. So they might have gave us, 50 cents or something like that. But that's the earliest story that I know of myself trying to sell something to somebody. But I think I know that the first time that I took a leap into business ownership and entrepreneurship, trying to sell something for money was when you and I started our Third Mind Concepts photography business. So I'm not sure if that's the same answer for you, but to tell the audience what that is. So if you remember in the 90s at the mall, they had those places called Star Shots.
Oh, yeah.
And all the girls would go.
I took all the ladies there.
All the girls would go and they'd get these photographs. And, I don't know about any other culture, but it seemed to be kind of like a Mexican culture, Hispanic culture. All the Latinas would go and
Photo booths were at the ghetto malls.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah.
they would go get their star shots done and then they would sign the back of them for you. And if you were lucky, you'd get their phone number on the back of their star shot. But
All right, hold on. I'm going to stop you right there.
what?
How many pictures with numbers did you get? Because clearly the audience wants to know that.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know how many I got, but I know that
That
I
was
got
a lot then. It was too
That's
many
not
that
a
Jason
lot. It
can't
might
even
have
remember
been
them.
too many to remember. Oh my
He's
God.
getting red now. He's getting red. He got too
right.
many.
Hey,
too
you know
many.
how,
He still
like-
has them in a box underneath his bed. Kim, look under the bed. It's a shoe box. He has them in there.
I do have a shoebox with a lot of old photos, and there are a couple of star shots in there. Why are you airing out my business? Hey, man, I got to hold on to a little bit of the past, right? Like,
There you go. There you
it's
go.
nostalgic. So anyway, star shots. Somehow we got the idea, and I don't know if it was your idea, my idea. I don't know. Maybe you remember the story, but we rented out a booth at the flea market, and we built a little wall, and we put up a green screen, and we had so you said it was a Sony digital camera?
Yeah, that's right. I still have it.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
I can pull it. It's sitting up here
It's
right
there.
above me.
That's nice. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a relic of the past.
It is. It is a relic.
And so we would take photos on a green screen backdrop and then use Photoshop to pull the background, and then we'd put in these Photoshop generated backgrounds. So we were AI before AI was AI, and we were doing it by hand and using Photoshop. So all that to say, we rented a booth. I don't remember how much we paid per month, maybe $150, $200 a month, something like that. So we had overhead. We bought the camera. I don't think you remember this, but I'm pretty sure we took a loan from your dad to be able to put the wall up, and your cousins built the wall for us. You don't remember that, but I
think the wall. I think the wall was donated by my cousin.
Maybe it was donated. Yeah,
my cousin. I do recall my cousin donated the wall, so that
yeah, they did the labor and all that.
I don't remember borrowing money from my dad, but maybe I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm sure if he's listening to this, he's going to say you still owe me money. So now,
No,
thanks for
I
opening
think
that up.
whenever
He's gonna invoice
Yeah,
me
right.
with interest. Yeah,
He's gonna hit us with the 23-year interest on a $500
20%
loan.
probably.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we defaulted many years ago.
So we had this idea that we were going to do this, and we got our prints made at Sam's, and so we put together like $20 packages, $30 packages for 24 pictures and 8x10, whatever it was. And so they would take pictures one weekend, and then the next weekend they could come back and get their pictures. So we had this little business going, and we had polos and a logo, and it was a whole thing. So, I look back and I think about that, and I was recalling that today because I knew we were recording tonight, and I was trying to remember any feelings, maybe not thoughts, but feelings that I had around that situation. And I can't really recall really what I was feeling in the time about that, but I knew that it was fun. We hung out, we had a good time, and then eventually it just wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. And so ended up going back to school and getting a degree and taking a different route. But yeah, that was the first thing that we did and that we shut down. And so I think maybe looking back, a lesson there is, it's okay to take a shot in the dark. It's okay to try something and not work. I think it's also okay to try something and then, it completely fail or decide that you want to do something else. So having given that story, like that's my answer to that question. Is yours the same answer? Did you do something before that?
Well, I'll throw an old story, and then I think my first entrepreneur thing was being in what was our science teacher's name? Miss Cooley? Miss Cooley, was that her name? Okay,
Yeah,
whatever.
like
Our science
Cooley,
teacher, but I remember
physics,
stealing. Remember she sold candy in class. Do you
maybe.
remember she had that closet? Okay, she had a closet full of candy. And I remember my
Okay.
first time I stole a bunch of her candy and then sold it to everyone at like a discount. And then
Oh,
and
bro,
then
you were the mob.
I
You were
stole her
organized
candy.
crime of Reagan High School.
All right, so this is we'll turn this into a confessions.
You were
Put
the
some music in there, when we
you were
said
the Tony Soprano. That Jose Razzo does kind of sound like a mobster name.
So my first selling things was that I can recall, like the earliest was stealing her candy, selling it back to everyone in class. I remember she called me up and was like, "Hey, someone snitched on me. Can you believe that? That's some bullshit, right? Someone snitched on me and said that I took candy." So I was like, "Oh damn, I'm gonna get in trouble here." I remember, and she was like, "Well, you need to pay me what you owe me." And man, I don't remember how much I owed her, but it was less than what I made. So I gave her cut. I was happy, she was happy, and we were good. So that was my first time really being in the understanding the demand market there, and so I made some money there. But I got a free Snickers out of it. What do you want? I love Snickers,
Oh
right?
my
Yeah.
gosh! I
All
wonder
right.
how many listeners we're gonna lose because they found out that their beloved host
Yeah.
Jose Razzo.
Yes, I'm a criminal.
Yeah.
I apologize. I have done my time and I have made amends with society. So
Hey, reform is possible, and
exactly,
we're
exactly.
all
So
about forgiveness and reform. So
don't and for anyone worried, I do pay for my Snickers bars now. So and if anybody wants to mail me some, I will post my address below or somewhere. And I want the almond Snickers now. I've kind of grown up and matured from the peanuts to the almonds. So all right. So, but yes. Okay. So going back to in all seriousness to the question about my first real business or venture into business was our Third Mind Concepts photo. And I'll give a little more context because, so it was my idea. And I don't know I can't recall why we ran with it so hard. Right. But I remember we were back in the day, we were doing Photoshop, and messing around with things. And I remember one time I had done pictures and I just got this, I think I saw online like studios were charging a good bit of money, and this is before AI. So anyone who's young has to understand AI wasn't around and it wasn't as easy as it is now, and you don't have the apps to do all these things. This is pre-iPhone days.
yeah, we didn't have AI; we had AOL.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember, we used to do a lot of the cleaning up the backgrounds and putting backgrounds and doing all these edits, and studios were charging big bucks for it. And so I remember being able to do it myself and then saying I could do this at a reasonable price. And then Sam's Club used to print pictures in store and within an hour, kind of like Walgreens still does now. And so the cost is pretty cheap. And so I remember just being like, hey, you know what? I bet there could be demand for it. And, in all fairness, right? And Jason kind of already covered the basic details to what we were doing. But in all fairness, we were in the photo booth. We're in the flea market spot, and we had our little photo booth inside the flea market's, space that we had rented out with the wall. And I think we learned some valuable lessons. I mean, if I really want to go back and look at it, I mean, we were doing sales, we were talking to people, we were putting ourselves out there. I think at the time we believed in what we were doing, and we sold things. People came and bought our things. We got to a point where we were printing packages. We were doing photos on canvas. You remember one guy lived close to my mom's house, and we used to print the photos on canvas, and he gave us a pretty decent price. And I mean, we were selling these for a few $100s at times. And so the demand was there. The one thing I do regret is that we proved the concept that demand was there. We just never scaled out of the flea market. And I think that was one of the biggest things. And the flea market back then was just a weekend thing. So I think it ate up our weekends. And so we didn't really have lives because we were there Saturday and Sunday. And then we didn't get out to I think it was 6 o'clock. And so that kind of ate up your weekends. And we were young at the time. So I think that was part of why we kind of business die out. But I will say, I don't know for you, but I continued to do photos. People would come to my house and I would do the same photos. And I have some really good stuff that I ended up doing for people.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
We also did I don't know if you remember, we did the Little League for a couple of years, and we did a prom. So from the flea market business, we did two seasons of Little League.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did 2 seasons of Little League. I don't know if you were there for the prom. We did a prom for one of the high schools. And we did it for the alternative high school where they send all the bad kids, but they still paid, so it was okay. And I remember actually that we talked about me buying a house. Some of the money I used to buy the house was from the Little League and one of the proms. And so,
oh wow, how about that?
I bought a lot of the furniture with that. So I still continued some of those skills and stuff afterwards, and eventually. I just gave up on it because I used the house. I mean, and we talked about this. If you haven't listened to the episode, I'm going to remind you guys, go back and listen to episode 1. I talk about my house purchase and being housebroken. Well, my studio eventually went from the flea market into my house, and I had my green screen set up in one of my spare bedrooms, and people would come and take pictures, and I continued to promote. I don't recall how I still continued to get business, but somehow I still managed to get business. I don't remember at all. I don't know there was no Google advertisements at the time, and I wasn't spending that kind of money. But people, I think it was a lot of word of mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably was word of mouth, but people kept coming. But you know what? I think we learned. I mean, we sit down, I think we learned things from that. I mean, I think we learned the sales. We learned about cost and profit, and and just the amount of work it took and then also working as a team. I think I'm sure me and Jason bumped heads many times during our experience. And at the time, my ex-wife was working with us. Laura was working with us, and and so it was different, but it was an experience. I think I don't know. I mean, I got some things out of that. I mean, I don't know about yourself, but I think we learned things, and it was fun. It was fun. That's all I can say. It was fun.
It was a good time, and when I look back on it. It was, we didn't know what we didn't know, but we knew enough to pull the trigger on something, and we came up with a name, and it was branded. I think there's something to be said for that. We had logos and with, polos with the logo. And so we set a standard for ourselves, the way that we would dress, the way that we would look, the way that we would present the business. We did branch out, which was really cool. We found different streams of revenue for the same product, and I thought that was really smart. I think looking back, so I ended up going to school for graphic design. I learned a lot more about Photoshop. I learned a lot more about design, and then eventually I took a digital photography course, and then after I graduated, I got a job in graphic design for a hockey team. And it was there that they were like, hey, do you know how to take pictures? And I was like, well, I took a digital photography course. They're like, well, we want you to take sports photography photos. And so that was a whole learning process. So I think once I got to that point in my career, I looked back on what we did and I thought, man, I didn't know what we didn't know at that point in time. Had I had that knowledge and we still had that business going, it would have gone a completely different direction. And so I think looking back, the lesson there is you really don't know what you don't know. And I'll say that a million times. And so research and education and continued learning and mentorship, all of that stuff is extremely important. So I continued in the photography world as well, but I went a completely different route. So when I was working for the hockey team, eventually part of that was, hey, we need a team photo. So then I had to take the team picture of all the hockey people. And then I needed individual portraits of all of the players. And then we had a dance team. And so I had to get portraits of all the dance team girls. And then those girls were going, and man, it was such a difficult job. You know what though? It was like everybody used to be like, oh, you're taking pictures of all these girls and blah, 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 and whatever. And for me, truly, if there was a woman, a good looking, beautiful, athletic woman sitting in front of me getting a portrait done.
Man. Go ahead, calm down.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. I just wanted to paint the picture. Really, all I saw was the lighting. Like I saw the lighting, I saw the composition, I saw the exposure in the kit. Like I just was there to get the photos. Like truly, like it was work for me. And so that was the only thing that was going through my mind was like, is this going to look good? Is the lighting right? Do I've got the hair light, the backlight? What's this look like? Then I started working with like strobes. And so it was just all technical. And it was at that time that I truly like fell in love with the technical side of cameras and photography and that kind of thing, because then it became almost a game as to like, can I produce the image that I have in my head, or can I see other people's photography and produce that image, or can I produce a style that completely stands out from anything else that's done? And then I would take those, it was all digital photography, take those into Photoshop, and then I would apply some of the skills that I learned while we had Third Mind Concepts, right? And some of the stuff that I learned in school and that kind of thing. So I went that route as well. And that's when kind of my second and third tier of entrepreneurship continued, because then I was doing it for the team, but then now I'm doing it on the side. Like these girls would need portraits, like a headshot, so they could put their application in to go dance for like the Texans or the Rockets or whatever it was. And so they would start in the minor league hockey team on the dance team, and then they would move up and then eventually, end up dancing for Texans or whoever. I knew one girl that ended up on Texans that I had taken her portraits or whatever. So I was doing that on the side. And then when I was talking about mentorship, I went and started working for a wedding photographer. And it started off me doing digital photo albums with his pictures. So he would go shoot the wedding, he'd do all the editing, and then he'd send me the photos. And then I would lay out these like 8x16 books in Photoshop, and he would go and get them printed and then give them to the brides and the groom. So I was doing that on the side. And eventually he was like, hey, I need an assistant to like carry around my bag, put lenses on my camera, swap SD cards, set up lighting, hold lights, go on photo shoots and do all this stuff. So he would hire me. Shout out to Eric Hofflin. He was in Humble, Texas, whatever. I still call him the GOAT.
Don't act like you didn't live down here. It's talking about humble.
It's
humble, boy. Come on.
I know it's humble.
Come on.
Some people say humble. Humble.
It's not humble. It's humble. Fuck
Stop humbling me on the podcast.
Hey, well, you know what? I'll hold on. I'm gonna have to plug your nephew. Does photos now. He does photography now. Yeah. We'll go ahead and give him a quick shout out. I know he listens, so we're definitely going to give him a shout out. Go ahead.
The crazy thing about that, so we'll shout out Chris Cerner. Okay. He's got Chris and Lara Photography here in Wichita, Kansas, and that is his primary job now. He is a wedding photographer. He and his wife, they're a team, and they do that here in Wichita, and that's his living. That's how he supports his family. And he pulled the trigger on going full-time on that like six or 7 years ago. So he's been doing it, and he's successful. And so it's interesting because when I was doing photography at the Houston Aeros, I kind of got him into it a little bit. And then he was doing photography at Austin High School in Houston. And then he ended up kind of being my assistant and going and shooting at the games at the Houston Aeros. And then eventually he branched out and did his own thing. But after I moved, he went and worked for Eric Hoffland doing the wedding photography stuff a couple times with him, and kind of went a little bit of that same route. And so it's just an interesting thing to kind of look at that and see how he followed in footsteps a little bit, but then went and did his own path and is doing really successful with it now. So yeah, that was an interesting time. And it was like trying different things and doing different things. So like from photography, because I was doing it on the side, I then had to learn how to build a website. So then I got into WordPress. So now I'm building websites in WordPress for myself. So now I'm like, I build websites, I shoot photography, I do graphic design, and any skill that I had that I learned either on the job or, went to school for or whatever, just continued in my education. I then ended up turning into some sort of brand and then, doing it for other people and making money that way. So I always had a full-time job, and then I had all my extra revenue streams. So at one time I was working for the Arrows, and that was my full-time position. I was doing graphic design for a church, and they had me on retainer. I was doing the wedding albums and the photographer assistant with Eric Hoffland. On top of that, doing the portraits. And then I ended up shooting like engagement photos and then like doing weddings. And so it just turned into this big thing that I had all these multiple streams of revenue. At that time, I was a single guy. I was still living in my mom's house. I was making good money. And so I just had a lot of time to get out there and grind and do all these different things. And I think for me, looking back, there's no other way that I would have wanted to spend my time, because I got to meet people. I got to be around people. I'm such a people person. And it kept me busy, it kept me moving. There was money coming in, and I got to do what I loved and do what I liked and keep growing in it. And so I think as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, really one of the main reasons I think people step into it is not just because of the income potential, but because there's potential for them to do something that they truly love. Would you agree with that?
No, I would, and I'll slow you down just a bit, just so we can kind of digest what you've said. I think you made a
Sure.
lot of great points. I just want to make sure the audience kind of captures what you said, and correct me if I misspeak here. I'm not trying to speak for you, but I think what Jason's pretty much alluding to, and I want everybody to kind of capture from what he just said. He gave tons of great points. Nothing he did, whether it failed or didn't fail, taught him something. We did the photo booth, and we tried an idea that we tried to make it work. And clearly the way we executed wasn't right, but the skills that we learned and some of the things we brought from that took both of us down certain paths. It allowed me to make some extra cash on the side. Yeah, it didn't become a full-time job for me, or didn't really that's not the field I pursued, but it got me more than just what we did at the flea market. And for Jason, I mean, clearly he's leveraged those skills and continues to leverage a lot of the design and the work and so forth. And even his nephew, who worked with him for a little while and actually kind of mentored under some of the same individuals, was able to create a successful career. And so, I think what people should kind of get out of this, we want people to understand and learn from what we're trying to say is, don't worry about failing. I think most people don't want to do things because they're afraid to fail. And look, I get that there's certain circumstances that if you're going to drop $100,000 on a business, yeah, you're going to be afraid to fail. But
Yeah.
what you should do is try to leverage some of these low cost entry types of businesses and gain the knowledge, gain the skill. They always say, and I've heard this online, I've heard this in different avenues. It says most millionaires are not the brightest people. And that's because a lot of times the bright people tend to sit around and kind of really overthink and focus. And I'm guilty of this. You'll think, but you'll never really do anything. That's why I continue to say execution is your true power. Someone who goes out there and tries and fails and tries and fails learns more from those attempts and fails and what's going to work versus someone else. So if someone comes in there and tries for 6 months and fails for 6 months, you could easily call them a failure. But at the end of the day, they have more knowledge and know what works and what doesn't work. That's a 6-month head start from anyone who's trying to learn from a book. I don't believe you learn things from books. I think books give you the foundation, but if you don't go out there and actually take some of those things and try it in the real world, you don't learn to live there. You can learn all kinds of things from books, but until you apply them in the real world, it's completely different. I think, and,
Right.
for me, going out to school, getting my degrees, a lot of what you're taught doesn't translate one to one in the real world. It's different, and you'll see the world different. And I think you'll learn more from work and from hands-on experience than you will from any type of book. What do you think on that?
Yeah, no, 100%, 100% I agree with that. There's some technical things. I think books help you understand ideas, and then ideas actually take implementation in order to understand. It's like I can give you a theory of how something works, but until I show you physically, then it's not really real to you. It's just still an idea. And so I think that's a really important thing to consider when people are wanting to jump out and do business or whatever it is. Like you're never going to know it all, or you may not know it all when you pull the trigger on whatever you're going to go and do, but you will learn along the way 100%. And so as we bring this episode to a close, I think we'll do another episode where we can continue on the journey, because we're still both entrepreneurs. We still both have businesses. We still are bringing in revenue from, selling products and doing things and providing services and assets and that kind of thing to help fund our lifestyle. Right. But to the point that I wanted to make here is that my business now that I have, Podcast Solutions and Podcast Table Shop, was a culmination of all of the experience that I've had throughout my life in business and with people and through photography and design and websites and problem solving and logistics and all these things. It took every bit of knowledge that I gained over the past, when did we do Third Mind Concepts? When we were 20 or 19?
21, 22, something like that.
Yeah, we were young. So when was that? 2002, 2003, something like that. So my business now, that what I pulled the trigger on 3 years ago, let's just say 20 years. It was 2 decades worth of getting out there and doing things and putting myself out there and taking risk and learning and realizing the things that I don't know and problem solving. It took all of that in order for me to launch this business. And even when I said, okay, I'm doing this business, and I put the LLC and registered it and put up my website, even before I sold my first product, there was still learning that I had to do. And that wasn't the finish line where I just got to use all my knowledge. It was the starting line. And so now I took off in this business, and everything from that point, the majority of it has been learning things that I didn't already know when I pulled the trigger on it. And so that's just, in my experience, has always been the case. And I think that's always going to be the case for people, because you open a new business and you're going to reach new levels, and they say new levels, new devils, right? Like there's going to be new things that are going to come your way, new problems, new issues, and all of that is more opportunity for learning and for growth.
Sure. Now, I think there's always, you never stop learning things, and things are going to change, and the environment changes, and the technology brings new aspects to business and improvements and efficiencies. And I think, we're in the middle of AI and how companies are going to leverage it, and don't feel behind in AI. Kind of my advice. Large companies are still trying to figure out. So small companies, if you're a small business individual and you still haven't figured out AI, it's okay. Large companies are still working through it, still trying to process how to best leverage these new, and that's going to continuously change. But I think as long as you're willing to adapt and to embrace new technology and embrace the fact that you don't know it all, and there's always a better way of doing some things, or just a different way of doing it, I think you can be successful in those aspects of life. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Any last kind of final thoughts here on being an entrepreneur? Lessons learned, skills that you've learned, anything you want to kind of leave people? If someone's out there sitting around here debating, they probably have the multi-million-dollar idea in their head, but they just haven't pulled the trigger for whatever reason. What advice are you going to give the person listening?
My mantra had always been just do it once. And so if it's like, I wonder what it'd be like to shoot weddings, just do it once. I wonder what it'd be like to offer, build a website for another person and get paid for it. Just do it once. And so after you do the first one, the second one will be a lot easier. It's kind of like, just staring your fear in the face, just doing it anyway, right? So, or doing it scared or doing it afraid, however people put it these days. It's like when I went to sell the podcast tables, it was just like, I want to sell at least one and then we'll see where it goes. At one point I hosted a how to podcast workshop and my mentality was just host one and then see how it goes. So I have more stories to tell about that. We'll do it in another episode, but I would just say, if you've got an idea, you don't have to pull the trigger on a full scale, full blown crazy situation. If it's baking cakes, bake one, sell one cake, whatever it is, sell one table that you make out of reclaimed wood. Just do it once, do it one time, find one customer, go through that process, go through the motions and learn from it. And then you're going to be able to do the next one a lot easier after getting the first one out of the way. So that's what I have to say about it. I do want to say something real quick to your point. You're talking about AI. I thought I was good with AI until I saw you use Claude, and I realized I have a lot to learn. And so I've learned a lot more because you showed me some things, and the way that I've used Claude and ChatGPT has changed based on some of the things that I've seen you make. But I think it'd be really beneficial for our listeners to hear an entire episode or even a series of episodes on how to use AI for small business. And I think that would be a really great time for me to pick your brain on how you used it to launch Allen's Landing Cleaning. And so just want to put that out there.
All right, so Jason throwing that off script here. So clearly he selected the next subject for our next podcast. So if you're listening to this and you're going to start your business, go ahead and make up your mind on whether you want to start your business, and then listen to the next episode, and we'll tell you how to leverage some of these solutions, how to be more efficient, and how to kind of gain it. Because nowadays, a lot of the nitty gritty that used to be very difficult is very easy to do. I myself don't come from a web background like Jason does, and I've been able to build a brand and a website for my cleaning business that is, in my opinion, just as good as any of the competition. And I have zero, and I do mean zero, website building ability other than building my own AOL back in the day and being able to put my picture up there, which
in your MySpace.
Horrible. In my MySpace. Yes, that's right. And so
and you had to know basic level HTML in order to code a MySpace page.
Oh yeah, definitely. So definitely, there's a lot of things that we can learn, and I think we'll bring that to the table in the next one. Yeah, we should definitely sit here and talk about how we both leverage AI in our businesses. And I most recently have started to do that. And as Jason said, we've kind of talked about it, and we had personal conversations on how to best leverage this. So I think there's tons of things we can cover in business. I think there's tons of things that we can continue to learn, and even for people like ourselves who've been trying to do this for a very long time, there's still things we're still learning. So don't be afraid to go out there, try things, fail, and just continue to learn. And as long as you're learning, even and I'll put this in the best way possible, even if you don't build a successful business, you will be successful, whether that's a 9-to-5 job. And I'm not shitting on 9-to-5 jobs. I have a 9-to-5 job that leverages my income to build some of my businesses and to do other things. So there's nothing wrong with that. Jason has just his businesses, and that's how he supports his family. And so there's no right or wrong way to do this.
Sure.
But I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think people need to sit down and just realize, hey, you know what? I can leverage what I know and how to know it and build that opportunity. And you never know. The sky's the limit at that point. You just got to believe in yourself. So I think today's been great. I appreciate all the knowledge, Jason. Don't tell no one I stole candy. And I am rocking the purple shirt today for you in honor.
I appreciate that.
What people say. You guys want to say, I'll wear the fucking purple. If I could find there you go. If I can find the Flintstones t-shirt, I will wear it. But I think that'll give Jason a little bit of trauma. But hey, I want to thank everybody for listening. If you guys haven't listened to our podcast, check out the first episodes. If not, then hey, you know what? Just like and subscribe to our YouTube. Listen to us on Spotify. I think Jason's even running our Instagram. Or no, I'm sorry. TikTok. I'm running the Instagram. He's doing the TikTok. So check us out. If you don't listen to the podcast, follow us on Instagram. Make sure if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe it so you guys know when we're, come out with some new episodes. And leave us comments. What you like, what you don't like. hey, even topics you want us to cover, that'd be great, because me and Jason sit here and we try to figure out what's going to be the best things to talk about, and the sky's the limit right now and all the fuck ups we've done. So hey, if you want to narrow it down to which fuck ups you really want to hear, let us know. So thank you to everybody for listening. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.